interesting thing about water, it's I call it the mega molecule because all cell functions in the body are related to the properties of water.
Mm-hmm.
The definition of milk is basically 87% value-added sunlight and flavored water, right? And so then one of the major ones we looked at was the transition cow, right? Everybody was into the transition cow problems, -3 to +3 weeks when I was going through. And we decided, well, transition cows, dry matter intake drops a bit, but they don't all drop. But water intake takes off. And so what could we supplement in water that could supplement potential? And and I know, it's all about energy and it's all about stress.
Hello, welcome back to the Dairy Podcast Show brought to you by Wisenetics. My name is Barry Bradford from Michigan State University, and today I'm pleased to welcome to the show Dr. Vern Osborne from the University of Guelph in Ontario. Dr. Osborne, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, you're most welcome, Barry. Thank you for inviting me.
So, Vern, you grew up in the dairy industry, is that correct?
That's correct. Born and raised on a purebred dairy farm, milk cows right up until about 2002. Did a lot of showing, so twice master breeder as well, and I'm only 10 minutes from the university.
Oh, awesome. Where you grew up is only 10 minutes away?
Yes.
That's fantastic. And you still farm, right? You juggle that along with being a professor, is that correct?
That's correct. Cash crop farming, about 300 acres here, and that keeps me busy and maintaining a farm here. So it's been a challenge. Haven't missed a lecture in 38 years, though.
Wow. It definitely gives you probably a bit of credibility with students and industry as well, that you're out there kind of doing it day to day, not just teaching about it.
Yeah, I'm definitely not one of those people that are all hat and no cattle.
One thing we're not going to talk about today too much, but I know you spent a lot of time on design of dairy facilities. Can you give me just a little bit of your background and how you got into that and where that's taken you in terms of projects?
I kind of have a bit of an engineering background too. We did a lot of buildings here at our place as well, and a lot of retrofitting. And I had two older brothers and my father as well, but he was the past president of the Hosting Association, so he was always away. And so we had to either go bigger or get out of the business. And so we've done a lot of renovations here as well. And then I taught a class for about 30 years in environmental physiology and animal housing. So we actually create building envelopes for a lot of the facilities. The students have a fantastic time. They can build anything they want for any species that they want. And then back in 2000, all the research facilities at the University of Guelph are a little bit outdated. So we actually created 3 research facilities, a dairy, swine, and a poultry, and an energy center. And so I was sort of, I picked the short straw on that one. So I had to basically, A, go get the money, and B, get all the scientific community on side and try to predict in the next 30 years what everybody's going to do. So we've got the dairy barn up and running. It opened in 2015. We done the swine facility, and we're currently working on the poultry facility. And between that, we got a new beef facility. So we're pretty fortunate in the province of Ontario to have the support of the provincial government and the fact that we have a sort of a multidisciplinary approach to tackling issues when it's related to animal agriculture. And I've done a lot of, and from that, I've done a lot of consulting international. So I built anywhere from 250,000 dairy cows to 250 cows. So
yeah, I've been to the site a few times, and the new feed center is very impressive as well. So it's pretty neat to see if anybody out there listening has a chance. This kind of integrated system where there's shared resources across those units, that makes a lot of sense.
I do a TED Talk. It's called Mission 2050, and it's actually what the dairy facility was supposed to look like. We had a $55 million budget, and in 3 days I had to tear it down to $25 million. So, but if you go onto the TED Talk, you can actually see what it would have looked like, because it has all the environmental components that everybody's scrambling now to actually get. And you're very lucky that you have a new facility at Michigan State. So congratulations on that.
Yes, it's going to be exciting to have that come on board. Thank you.
Elevate animal performance with Berg & Schmidt Animal Nutrition, your trusted ally in excellence. Their high-quality feed ingredients like coated nutrients and fat powders provide ruminants with extra energy, boosting health, productivity, and cost efficiency. Unleash your herd's potential with Berg & Schmidt.
All right. Well, I think the topic of the day is water. I always talk about this as the most important nutrient that nobody ever thinks about, right? What got you interested in focusing on this as a portion of your expertise?
Well, okay, because I did a lot of showing, we used the water as a vehicle for the transfer of a lot of nutrients, particularly with cattle that you're moving around or trucking, and you have to get them into a show ring, and you have to. So it was kind of always in the back of my mind that I should start to look at that a little more. And a couple of our producers, really good producers, basically ran out of water. And I thought, well, this is in the early 90s. And I thought, well, I was at CMEX Canada for 2 or 3 years. So I ran around the world and I saw a lot of conditions in them. A lot of them were water-based. So I thought, okay, maybe it's time to make some Gatorade for cows and to start to look at sort of water quality issues. So that started, excuse me, probably in the early to mid 90s.
Okay.
So that's basically why I got interested in it.
So what kinds of nutrients are you talking about that you were playing with delivering through water?
The interesting thing about water, it's sort of, I call it the mega molecule because all cell functions in the body are related to the properties of water.
Mm-hmm.
The definition of milk is basically 87% value-added sunlight and flavored water, right? And so then one of the major ones we looked at was the transition cow, right? Everybody was into the transition cow problems, -3 to +3 weeks when I was going through. And we decided, well, transition cows, dry matter intake drops a bit, but they don't all drop. But water intake takes off. And so what could we supplement in water that could supplement potential? And I know, it's all about energy and it's all about stress, right? That's the bottom line with the dairy industry, right? And so we decided to put glucose in water, we put soybean in water, we put histidine, we put dextrose in water, we put all the omega fatty acids in water. And it's quite interesting because, we don't know if that reticular groove is still really active or not. And you don't know when to actually cattle drink or not. But
right,
we got fantastic results on that transition. Then we thought, well, let's go down to -1 to +1, right? Because producers don't need to be supplementing that extra, right? It's a cost effect. And so one of the interesting things that we didn't publish the data was the -3 to +3. We put glucose about 2%. So these cows, they were getting anywhere between 2 and 3 kilos of glucose through the water with their intake.
Wow.
And the interesting thing is the dry matter intake actually went down. So they eat to their energy level, right? But they stayed metabolically, they were energy balanced fairly well. The interesting thing, and I was just looking over the data, was the fact that when we put energy into the water, it goes in the rumen. How long does it stay in a rumen? Does it go bypass?
Right.
I mean, that orifice opens every minute. It's a contraction. So how long is it? Is she full? Is she not full? So our ammonia levels dropped in the rumen. So we had that synchrony of nutrients. So we had the energy and the nitrogen, and it was captured. It was put into fatty acids versus that loss of energy. But the interesting one on the dry cows was we took blood samples from calves prior to them being fed either milk or suckling. And there are over a millimole difference in glucose in the blood of that calf.
Really?
Yeah, and I haven't published that. And I'm going, okay, so we did it again, and we got the same results. And so I thought, well, stress of calving.
Probably a 20% change, right?
Yeah, I was like shocked. I'll leave it to Eduardo, whatever happens on the reproduction side, because that's just another whole ball of wax I don't want to get into. But
yep,
it's the transfer, placental transfer. But keeping these cattle in that positive energy status, even for 3 days, has a huge effect. And then we looked at omegas and fish oil. I thought, no way would a cow drink fish oil, and they did. And we didn't have to emulsify it. We laid it on the top of the water bowl and they just drank it up. It's just that dry food drink is unbelievable. And so then we looked at sort of nutraceuticals and we put the omega fatty acids in, and it went straight to the milk. But we got that fantastic rumen that we don't know what the heck happens in half the time. Some say as low as 10% bypass, some say maybe 60% bypass, but what's the time of day? Cows usually drink and eat fairly. It means like you and I sit down for supper, we have a plate of food and we have a drink. In a lot of cases, I think probably the biggest issue with dairy is the location of waterers, where they need to be relative to where the bunk is. And unfortunately, when we design dairy facilities, we always put water facilities where, the skid steer isn't going to hit,
Right.
in the barn. Somebody's not going to run into it, right? Or it's not going to overflow and cause a disaster. I mean, these cross alleys just kill me when you see all the waters in cross alleys, and they're there for probably the number one reason is to wash down the cross alley versus what's good for the cow, right? So
Yes.
yeah, so we found a lot of interesting things. I mean, it's just a whole Pandora's box when you look at what's milk. Milk is you still 100 liters to 120 liters of water, and then you might have 25 kilos of dry matter and 25 kilos of moisture in that feed. So you're up to 150 to 200 liters total of food and water, and 80% of that is water.
Very high requirements.
And we've done a fairly large study. This is one of the things that we talk about nutritionists is, and one issue I think is we don't use enough of natural water intake and being able to supplement. So that means we don't have to drench. So let's just let them naturally supplement themselves. And the other interesting thing is the components that are in water and the minerals that are in water and how that affects the intake center of the animal neurologically. The oral mucosal cavity, we've done nothing about that. It's 40,000 receptors, right? And that cow can pick 0.3 parts per million of iron out like no problem at all. I mean, you got a colleague there, Dave Beatty, that worked a lot on the iron, right?
Yep.
And that's always an issue. And the thing is, if I'm a nutritionist and I'm looking for, we're down to splitting hairs on what issues are the problem, is that we never look at the quality of the water, what the chemical makeup is, right? Because I have cattle with major cations, sodium, potassium, calcium, that are getting over 10% of the daily mineral requirements just through the water. And we kind of discount water and discount vitamins a little bit. And it has a tremendous chelating effect on what you put in as a good nutritionist, as a mineral to balance things. And you just end up having an expensive urine. And the most interesting thing is, I would say 90% of the dairy producers, dairy producers are multitasking. They produce a crop. They have to, I always say my dairy guys are better than the crop guys are because they really have to look at quality.
Right.
Those guys, when they go and they spray their fields, the herbicides or pesticides or everything, they condition the water to get a better effect of whatever element they're putting in water. We never condition our water.
Yeah.
It's something that we should be really looking at. And not all water is the same because, you have geological folds within, I'm just going to say Ontario. You can look at it, it extends straight into Michigan. We have sort of high elements in different ones, depending on the geographical or the geography and the soils. We looked at Dave Kelton one time too. We looked at iodine in milk, thinking, it's coming from the dip, post-dip, whatever it is. Actually, it was coming from the water because that geological area had a fairly high level of iodine. But it's something that we really should start to pay a lot more attention to, particularly if we're fine-tuning. If you're fine-tuning rations and diets, don't discount what's in the water and what's coming through the water, because it's an unbelievable chelating agent, both either negative or positive.
It may be because of where I work, but it does seem like, installing systems to, say, remove iron or to improve water quality has become more common on dairies than it was 20 years ago. I think some people are starting to think that the return on investment's there for some of that.
Yeah, that's the number one question I get, Barry. And what's the most economical approach to do it relative to the fact that you're 20 to 50,000 liters of water in a fairly large dairy facility. Um, you know, the thing is about it, you got to be careful because you can have a mechanical filtration system or a chemical filtration system, and I am 100% with mechanical. Because chemical, there's byproducts like chlorine. Like I was in New York State, chlorine, and they were on town water. They were forced to go on town water, and they had those nice bowls with the round balls on top, and the heifers wouldn't drink it because they pushed the ball down, and it would be the off gassing from the chlorine, and they'd go away from it. And then there's other ones with byproduct is trihalomethanes that we looked at. Even fluoride now. Fluoride is starting to rear its ugly head when it comes to, guess what? Embryos.
Huh.
So if you've got a reproduction, yeah, I just saw a paper on that. It was mostly on, it was on actually zebrafish and other small vertebrates and fish, but basically when it comes to reproduction, we're not that much difference when you come to a mammal. So I thought, okay, that's interesting. So I think it's if we don't do a full chemical analysis on all the water that we look at, we're doing a disservice to the dairy industry because that ends up in milk too. Those elements end up in milk. So there's the best one is it's pretty quick. It's mechanical, so you have a in series filter like sediment filters in series, maybe 1, 2, or 3. And then I would go to the Venturi system of using air to get rid of iron, and you should be pretty good because that'll usually take the sulfate out. All the producers in Canada have to have a 0, 0 potability status, so they put peroxide in, hydrogen peroxide in.
Oh.
But that's mostly for cleaning water.
Yep.
It's not for drinking water. But some of the times they use the drinking water, or the cleaning water for feeding calves. Well, then you start to get problems because it knocks out bacteria, right? So you don't want a young calf being the bacteria knocked out. So yeah, lots of potential issues.
Absolutely. So you mentioned one clear, well, at least I took it as a clear recommendation of at a minimum you should be analyzing your water so that you can incorporate that into your diet formulation decisions and stuff. Sounds like at least some places you recommend thinking about filtration systems of some type. What are some other practical pieces of advice you have, particularly if somebody's building a new facility?
Well, it's location. Cows like to drink as individuals, but they do drink as a group, so they need individual. I in the dairy facility that I designed, we put individual water bowls around as well as the cross alley tip troughs, right? And so we initially saw them using it, but again, when you're dealing with a research facility and you've got operational staff and things that are issues, they might want to close things down. But I like individual drinking stations around. And the other one that we have is cows love moving water, and they're suction drinkers. So you'll see a tip trough, which is a foot deep by a foot wide and whatever. Well, they only go down about this far. And so you don't really need all that water.
Mm-hmm.
So we did a preliminary study. We just took these heating serving trays, that you see when you go through the cafeteria, and we put them on top of that, and then we put circulating water, just an aquarium pump, and they love it. They love circulating water. But they're suction drinkers. They don't need all that. It's what the best thing is to have volume. Location is always the issue. And to get that supplemental water, the recommendations is as many potential water systems as you possibly can. The other thing is take advantage of rainwater. Even though, we have these forever chemicals, etc., we got an issue, but you can filter rainwater. And, that roof of the new dairy facility, 1.5 inch of rain is almost 300,000 liters of water, where we go through anywhere between 50 and 60. And what's going to happen is it's going to become a cost of production, right? Potentially, it's going to be anywhere between $1 and $3 a cubic meter for water. And even though it's your aquifer and your well, you're going to be charged with water in the future. So I think the biggest thing about knowing the minerals is knowing what the potential chelations of those minerals could be. If you're putting extra selenium in, or you don't know what your vitamin E status is or anything like that you could tweak that versus necessarily changing the water. right? Other than if it's really bad iron or something.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we also looked at, now we have 5,000 samples. And again, I haven't published it yet, but there is a potential correlation with it's called mineral pathological issues, where minerals will build up in certain parts of the body, and then they'll start to, whether it's calcium or in this case it was manganese, and it has a neurological effect because a cow will look at zero 0.3 parts per million of iron detected. She'll also do fairly low levels of manganese, and then her appetite center, or let's call it her water center, will say, well, I'm euhydrated, I'm fine, I'm okay. But actually, she's actually dehydrated. She hasn't drank enough water, but the signals are all telling her neurologically that she has.
Gotcha.
And that's because of the oral mucosal receptors.
Fascinating.
It's a fascinating area because it's so different. I mean, water samples in one farm is the same as putting soil samples on your own farm 20 feet away. It's totally different.
Yeah. One other thing a lot of people recommend, I think, is figuring out some place to put drinking opportunities on the path just out of the parlor or on the way back to pens. Are you a fan of that strategy?
It depends on exit alleys. It's always relative to the speed of the parlor, right?
Yeah.
And you don't
right.
want cost. I'd rather get them out there and get them back in the pen, and do something better at the pen level.
Okay.
And in a lot of cases, it's if they're in the holding area or the exit, there's that heat stress. They're staying in the holding area. There's the stress. I mean, that's the biggest problem. Well, we could do a whole another 30 minutes on cooling cows because they've got it all wrong. But anyhow, that's another whole story. I'm not a fan of that. I'm a fan of offering more water plates, if you want to call it.
Okay, yeah.
It's time for our famous three.
Beta-carotene can impact reproductive performance in cattle. Because the main sources of beta-carotene are forages, most cattle don't get enough. Victus Transition from DSM Firmenich contains a blend of beta-carotene and mixed tocopherols, which provide needed vitamin A and antioxidants. Victus Transition fed cattle have better fertility rates and improved colostrum quality. Make sure your cattle get the beta-carotene they need with Victus Transition. Visit dsm-firmenich.com/Victus Transition.
And then I'm curious, I've had some interest myself in water-delivered nutrients, and particularly, as you noted, if farms have a short-term transition pen, that makes for a nice opportunity to maybe consider putting some nutrients in. And it's much more common in the swine and poultry industries than dairy. Have you seen farms using sort of water injection systems to titrate in nutrients on commercial farms?
Yeah, I mean, again, there's two ways of doing that, right? There's a volumetric approach to it, which is the volumetric meters of so much volume through and it kicks a bit out. But I'm really liking the new peristaltic pump approach to it, so it's really accurate. And so I would do I can't remember the system, but there's peristaltic pumps that are out there now that'll do it really, really accurately. And the interesting thing is, depending on what you're doing with it, is I like to do it through water bowls, through water troughs, or shallow water troughs, not those deep tip troughs, right? So you have it sitting there, because if it's glucose or something energy or something sweet, everything else in the barn is going to go after it too, right?
Absolutely.
So you could have spoilage in the water and bacteria. So I like just in time delivery of the nutrients, a shallow bowl, a moving water, and a peristaltic pump. And they're getting really fairly cheap now relative to the volumetric ones, and accurate.
And what do you see if people are actually using these on commercial farms now? What do you see people actually putting in the water? Is it the whole range of things you listed before?
Mostly it's an energy source. So dextrose, glucose, it's all about energy at that state, because -3 +3, you can do a lot for energy. -3 +3, if you're adding amino acids, you don't know. Minerals could be something you could add too, but to me, with transition cows and transition pens, even if you go to 21 days, even like 1% glucose or 1% dextrose, and it's fairly cheap, it's liquid, it mixes well. It's easy to apply. You just pick your rate and you just don't worry about it and let everybody else self-drench.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, there's probably not a lot of risk there, right? I think some of the nutrients, one of the issues is, like you alluded to, we don't really know still in a mature ruminant if she's drinking a bunch of water, how much of that is just bypassing the rumen entirely versus staying there. I don't think we really know.
No, it's. I think Dennis Poppy and I have had a discussion over that for many, many, many years in Australia. He did some preliminary studies. It went to 10. Some studies is 10% to 60%, but are they full fed? Is it their second time to the trough? Is it? But they do drink fairly heavily around the milking times, so after milking, so that could be the time when you could get increased bypass if you wanted to. But the thing about energy is that it either helps the rumen or it helps downstream.
I agree.
You're not going to put a fairly, let's say if you wanted to create it. Well, actually, what I've done is in some countries, they won't allow you to supplement anything in the water. There's a rule for that.
Oh.
And so I've gone to gels now. So you create a gel that can go in, and mostly I wanted to look at mostly, AMS systems. The cow comes in, you just spit the gel out, and they just lick it up like candy, and then that gel either can float in the rumen, or you can create a gel to bypass. But it gets more complicated that way. Whereas if I had 200, 400 cow operation, like if I was, I would do it standard protocol. This is what you're going to get. And it's easy to clean, which is another thing.
Yes, important point. That's fascinating. I'd love to see people continue to work on that. I think there's some great ideas there. All right. Before we run out of time, though, I can't let you get by without these three tricky questions we like to throw at everybody. So the first one to ask you is, what's your favorite dairy-related book or resource?
I always tell my students that, yes, there's lots of great dairy books out there, but oh my God, go find something comparative. Go find something that you can think you can read and actually then relate it back to dairy. So my number one, I got two, but I'll give you my number one. It's this one. It's called Are We Smart Enough to Know How Smart Animals Are? By Franz de Waal. You read this book, and what you do is you go, oh man, I should look at calves a little differently. I should look at mothers a little differently. And the other one, which is a fantastic book, you will not put it down, I guarantee you, is by a writer called Ed Young. And it's called An Immense World. Oh my God, it is just fabulous. And I give my students, I say, read those books and then try to apply that back to what you're working on your project or how you would do that for the dairy industry. And I'm batting 1,000 on this one. Whether it's I don't play for LA and I don't play for New York, but it's this one, and I don't play for the Tigers anymore, but they're gone, I guess. Is that it is really a really good eye-opening one. So I try to get them to relate that back to dairy, and it really works.
That's great. I've read some Ed Young magazine length articles. He's an excellent writer, for sure.
And he does the microbes within us too, which is another book. It's really good.
Well, those are new ones. Good. I like it. All right. What about your favorite book or resource outside of agriculture?
If you're in my department, everybody knows I'm a book collector. So I have over 2,000 books in the next room.
Okay.
And that was the hardest one. When I do it, if I do it for like nutritionists and for students, it's a book called Never Split the Difference by Chris Vows. And it's the art of negotiation. And so if you have to help someone, sell someone, support someone, how do you negotiate that? And you know how our attention span is getting less and less and less, and how producers just don't have the time anymore. But it's really a good book on the art of negotiation, particularly in a field that we've been in for years.
Never Split the Difference. Is that what you said?
Yeah, Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. He's
okay.
I think he was a FBI agent or a CIA agent for negotiating with terrorists. I think was one of the issues.
Wow.
Oh, it is. It's fantastic, Barry. You're going to go out and buy it right now.
All right. Last question then. What sets successful dairy professionals apart from those who are less successful?
I think we do a good job at foundational skills, which is the key one. And I think probably our students, your students, they're good listeners, right? Listening is probably one of the best things that they can do. They also practice what I would say is curiosity, right? Why is this happening and why is it not happening? They also have empathy, right? Because they say, oh my God, this poor producer is in the problem. And so they have empathy. And they have humility because sometimes they know, gee, I'm wrong and that person's right. And I find a lot of them are, they're yes and people, they're not yes but, right? Yes and brings everybody together. A yes but, everybody shuts off. And so that's what I've seen, and I've seen this around the world too. And then obviously all of them have the greatest asset in the world, which is enthusiasm. It beats money, power, and influence any day of the week.
Well, Vern, Dr. Vern Osborne, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. It seems like that half hour went by pretty fast for me anyway.
Yeah, you're most welcome. Thanks for having me.
So this has been another episode of the Dairy Podcast Show. If you haven't followed or subscribed yet, make sure you hit the button before you leave so that you don't miss the next episode. And Wise Genetics will be bringing you that next episode soon, so we'll see you that time.